I'm saying if you want to speak.
The Senate will please come to order. We'll begin this Friday morning, the end of the session, with a moment of silence in lieu of a devotional. Thank you. Are there any announcements this morning? This brings us then to the orders of the day. We have on the calendar for action H157, read for the first time on April 9th, 2021. It was referred to the Committee on Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as set forth on pages 2479 to 2486 of today's calendar, and that when so amended, the bill ought to pass. The bill was then referred to the Committee on Finance, which reports that it's considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs, and that when so amended, the bill ought to pass. Finally, the bill was referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs, and that when so amended, the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of H157.
H157. An act relating to registration of construction contractors.
The senator from Windsor, Senator Clarkston, is recognized for the report of the Committee on Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs.
Thank you, Madam President. May I speak to the amendment and to the underlying bill?
You may.
Thank you. And as you all know, we have an additional amendment later in the proceedings. H157 is a consumer protection bill. Its work will protect Vermonters from home improvement fraud through the registration of residential home contractors. For years, the Attorney General's Consumer Assistance Program, CAP, has wanted to improve protections from home improvement fraud. The AG has brought this proposal to us before because it's one of the top areas of complaint the AG's office gets, along with telephone and IRS scams. From 2012 to 2017, CAP received 587 consumer complaints about home improvement services, with claimed losses exceeding $3.1 billion. As the attorney for the Office of Professional Regulations said, quote, and I quote, "If OPR observed complaint volume of that character in any regulated profession, we would conclude either that we had a genuine epidemic of misconduct or else that some unique social phenomenon is leading consumers to expect something fundamentally different from what they are getting from honest practitioners." Last week, one witness said that, quote, in New Hampshire, Vermont is known as the Wild West for building contractors. You need to have a license to be a plumber or to be an electrician, but no requirements to build the most expensive thing most Vermonters will ever buy. After several years looking at this problem, we asked the OPR in 2017 to undertake a preliminary sunrise review of the home improvement landscape with the principle that OPR applies to everything, that occupational regulation should be applied only where absolutely necessary to address real harm to the public. OPR had public hearings and took public comments over the course of a half a year. Their work took them on a listening tour of the state. Their Sunrise report confirmed what the AG's office had been reporting, that home improvement fraud was indeed rampant, particularly if the contract was under $7,500, and that there were frequent flyers committing the fraud. The Sunrise Report's recommendations are embodied in this legislation, which is almost identical to the bill S-163, which the Senate passed in 2019. In addition to trying to further protect Vermonters from experiencing home improvement fraud, we realize this is a problem of rational access to justice. Home improvement fraud is already illegal. The courts already enforce contractual obligations, but few go to court because civil litigation comes with an access cost so high that while one can obtain a judgment, one often comes out behind financially. And even if you get a judgment, it's hard to get payment on that judgment. In addition, it's difficult to find out if there are judgments against a contractor you might want to hire. H-157 creates a light touch regulation, the least restrictive form of regulation available, which is registration. We are one of 8 states which doesn't regulate home contractors at all. 42 other states either license and or register contractors. Many states require background checks, and a number require continuing education. Registration is distinct from licensure in that it does not inquire into the skills of registrants, does not require any particular degree or training, and does not require any kind of test. In addition, home contractors can voluntarily be certified in various areas of expertise: weatherization, renewable energies, historic renovation, etc. Voluntary certification may be developed by the director of OPR by rule, and voluntary certification is a program by which those in the marketplace can demonstrate qualifications and competence and obtain a state certificate. This bill provides an administrative remedy that is currently lacking to provide consumers with confidence in the system, assurance that all are registered, all have insurance, and that everyone has a contract. And it will provide contractors with a common professional standard for the industry, something that most of them want. And in rare instances, an extrajudicial means of resolving disputes. Remember from my floor speech the other day, OPR provides tribunal services through OPR's administrative processes. They are OPR has a terrific system of this work. And in addition to protecting homeowners, registration can help level the playing field. And this is so important for the overwhelming majority of contractors who play by the rules. One should not be at a competitive disadvantage for paying your taxes, carrying liability insurance, obtaining worker compensation insurance, or meeting one's other societal obligations. The vast majority of the complaints the AG's Consumer Protection Office heard were for projects costing $1,000 to $7,500. 61% of the complaints were for under $5,000. And more recently, in the last 2 years, it's dropped. 60% of the alleged losses were for amounts $3,500 or less. So we recommend in this legislation that registration be mandatory for all home contractors who enter into a contract for home improvement services of $2,500 or less, or more. This light touch proposal requires 3 basic elements: registration, insurance, and a written contract. All contracts for $2,500 or more will need to be in writing. OPR will make it very easy for people. They'll have a model contract available for people to download. The goal is a very wide, very light regulatory net spanning a broad range of work on residential dwellings. In the event of misconduct, a registration may be suspended, revoked, or conditioned as necessary to protect the public. Application and biannual renewal fees are for an individual, $75, for a business, $250. State certifications are $75 for the first certification and $25 for each additional certification. For an individual, this equates to an additional $37.50 a year and $125 a year for a business. This bill provides for a long onboarding period for registration, with mandatory registration beginning in April 2022, but contractors will not face any consequences for failure to register until April of 2023. In testimony from 2019, we heard from the president of the Vermont Builders Association, who supports this program. They feel it has merit and will add value to their profession and a degree of professionalism. It will be helpful in marketing contractors to consumers. During the community hearings on this Sunrise Review, several contractors remarked that this step was a common sense approach, that it wouldn't negatively affect them, and that this was consistent with current practice. And we heard from an Addison County homeowner who is the voice of many of our constituents who have spoken to us about their losses. This person lost $4,600 in a down payment where the contractor absconded with her money. She felt she got so scammed and that said that her current contractor would like a registry, feeling that it would separate out the bad actors, and adding, "I'd be totally fine with even being licensed." Senators in the last 3 days have heard from 7 very strong voices supporting this legislation, from AARP to Cove to the Vermont Builders and Remodelers Association to the Vermont Fuel Dealers, let alone our Secretary of State and our Attorney General. And we appreciate their support. The bill creates 2 positions within OPR's licensing division, one in enforcement and one in licensing. Both positions are funded entirely out of OPR's special fund raised through fees, and there are no general fund dollars used to support them. This community has not been regulated, and the creation of this profession will and this registration will require significant education and outreach and on-ramping. OPR needs these positions to properly create and support this program and to do this important public protection work. OPR is to give us a status report on the implementation of this program by January 15th of 2023, including the potential design and implementation of a one-stop portal for contractors and consumers. One of our Senate colleagues let me know that they plan on voting yes on this bill based on 2 constituents who lost a lot of money from someone who took their money and ran. Sadly, we have too many constituents who have experienced exactly this. H-157 doesn't end the Vermont handshake. It gives the handshake meaning and protection. Your Senate Economic Development Committee heard from 7 witnesses this year on this bill. Matt Cota, the Executive Director of the Vermont Fuel Dealers Association, Christopher Curtis, the Chief of the Public Protection Division in the Attorney General's Office, David Hall, our very able and patient Legislative Counsel in the Office of Legislative Counsel, Lauren Hibbert, our terrific Director of the Office of Professional Regulation in the Secretary of State's Office, Bradley Talbot, Principal, Vermont Licensed Plumbers Association, Representative Chip Troiano, the reporter of the House Committee on General Housing and Military Affairs, and Chris West, the owner of Eco Home Houses of Vermont. Our committee vote was 4-1-0, and we would ask for your support.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Chittenden, Senator Sirotkin, excuse me, we have a little feedback. The senator from Chittenden, Senator Sirotkin, is recognized for the report of the Committee on Finance. I also recognize, Senator, that you do have an amendment. I'll come back to you after the appropriations report for that.
Thank you, Madam President. The Committee on Finance reviewed the Joint Fiscal Office fiscal note on this, and we agreed with the House and the Division of OPR of the amount of the fees, which you'll find at $75 for a biennial registration for a contractor individual, $250 for a business contractor, and $75 for a certification in the first instance, and subsequent certifications of $25. The certifications won't go into effect until the next fiscal year, so the fiscal note doesn't reflect that added revenue. As the reporter of the bill said, these positions that are being funded are designed to be self-funded through the fees, and the total amount of fees that are suggested in the year 2022 to 2024, the estimated revenues are $230,000 to $270,000. The committee vote was 7-0 in finance. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Chittenden, Senator Baruth, is recognized for the report of the Committee on Appropriations.
Thank you, Madam President. We did review this bill in Appropriations. We had a somewhat robust debate about it. There was agreement, as my colleague from Chittenden just said, that OPR would be fronting the money for these positions from their existing resources, and that eventually the fees would take over and pay for those two employees. So there was agreement there. As we drifted a little bit into discussion of the bill itself, some divisions became evident on the committee. And so a narrow majority, voted to move the bill positively to the floor. And our vote, as I say, was divided, but 4-3 in favor of having this bill move on its way. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Chittenden, Senator Sorokin, is recognized for the amendment.
Thank you, Madam President. This amendment has been characterized in our committee congenially as the Matt Cota Amendment, who is the director of the Fuel Dealers Association. It cures a important problem that the House sent to us, and that was the fact that all businesses who did residential contractors would have to register, and that was unnecessary and duplicative. So what we did in our amendment here in the first instance was to say that businesses that have primarily used licensed or certified professionals in their business do not have to register, nor do, in fact, the House version went so far as you could have a small plumbing company and you could have 3 licensed plumbers in there, and as long as the bookkeeper wasn't registered, you would have to register the business. So we took care of both of those problems, and I think we made a lot of people happy with doing that. In the second instance of amendment, another concern that was brought to us by the business community and the Fuel Dealers Association was people who are, they didn't want people to start registering in lieu of getting a license or certification that might be required by the Department of Public Safety, and that people might get confused and go to the lesser standard of registration. So we put in this language that when people come to register, they have to be notified specifically that they can't do plumbing, electrician, stuff like that, unless they get certified or licensed by the Department of Public Safety as well. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. We'll first take up the amendment. The question is, shall the Senate amend the bill as recommended by the senator from Chittenden and others? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please unmute and say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've amended the bill as recommended by the senator from Chittenden and others. The question now is, shall the Senate propose to the House to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs as amended? Are you ready for the question? The senator from Franklin is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I do not believe that this amendment is either necessary or particularly desirable for a variety of reasons. We have continued over the years to expand the Office of Professional Regulation. And for fear of sounding my age, I remember back a number of years ago in the 70s when I chaired a licensing board. And at that time, the Office of Professional Regulation, such as it was, had, I believe, 2 members in it. Today, that number, I believe, is up to 38 and growing. And it seems to grow more and more every year, and this, again, measure would add to it. The concern, that I have, among other things, is I don't necessarily feel any safer today than I did then, despite the fact that we now have a large number of people who are working very diligently and very hard to protect us. And that goes to the substance of this bill. We acknowledge that there are bad people out there who overcharge consumers and victimize them. And in looking at this legislation, the first question that I asked was, well, will that help them? Will that get their money back? And what I heard from the Attorney General and I heard from the proponents of the bill is, well, they've got to go to court and sue. Well, that's what they have to do now. This doesn't get anybody any money back. But what it does do is it adds to cost. It adds to cost for the small contractor, the person who's just starting out. You know, we've said, among other things, for example, we want to help BIPOC businesses and new Americans start businesses. And what better business is a small home contracting or handyman service? And this discourages people from forming that type of business because, again, it ensnares them in bureaucracy and additional rules and so on. It assumes that Vermonters are incapable of doing any due diligence on people that they hire. And if they're not doing any due diligence on people that they hire by calling friends and neighbors and others, what makes we think that they're going to call a contractor registry operated by an impersonal state agency to help them? And even if they do we have confidence that it will in fact help? When we hear from the Office of Professional Regulation that if there is a complaint against someone under this regimen, and they have to investigate and adjudicate it, it will take 6 to 8 months before that adjudication will appear on the record for anybody to look it up, even in the event that they decided to look it up in the first place. There's mention that a number of industry representatives were among those who testified ostensibly in support of this bill. But as I remember the testimony, virtually the only testimony I heard were industry groups coming in saying that some of their members shouldn't be included in these numbers. And one of the things you always fear when you have industry groups that support these kinds of things is, are they doing it for the public interest, or is there some concern about protecting their own members? Because in the event that there are fewer contractors, there in fact is less competition. And this is one that keeps the small guy out. And that, to me, is also a major concern. That being said, there's nothing that prevents the Attorney General or the industry groups that believe that public education is important, or the nonprofit agencies that support this kind of outreach. There's nothing that prevents them from doing that right now. There's nothing that's prevented them from doing it in the past, if there's a public interest served in doing it. And there's nothing that prevents the agencies involved in government from providing that information, such as the Attorney General's office, that believes that the public should be better informed about scams that are out there. All of that education could be done without this regimen of overarching registration. And to that end, I voted against this bill, and that's why. It's not that we don't have a problem. We do have a problem. We have instruments in place that can help solve that problem. But right now, this bill does not help consumers to get any of the money back, which is my major concern about the bill as itself. So thank you, Madam President.
I will unmute myself. There we go. The senator from Chittenden, Senator Pearson, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I thought I would just offer a couple of comments even before I heard the last comments from the senator from Franklin, because I myself have sort of had traveled on this bill, I think you could say. we just heard that there's nothing that prevents the outreach from happening, where we sort of agreed, I think, that there's beneficial educational potential. There's nothing that prevents that from happening under the status quo, was the argument, except that we don't know who these people are. And so we have no way to reach them. And that has a lot to do with my shift of attitude on this bill. I have a sort of libertarian streak senators have sometimes seen, and I have worked alongside contractors. I have friends who are contractors, and frankly, I hesitated to support this bill and then go to a barbecue with my contractor friends and be endlessly ribbed for my nanny state instincts. But the more I looked at the data, the more I looked at the OPR process and the reality on the ground of this very light touch of a $35 fee, and the more I started to understand, I agree with the senator from Franklin. This is not retroactively going to help people get their money back. This is a preventative measure. This will help the next person from being defrauded from the same scam artist. And this does not hurt. I take issue with the idea this hurts the very small handyman, because this very small handyman or woman hits below the threshold of registration. So I think we've taken care of that. I don't think this helps people reclaim their money if they were ripped off a year ago. I think this helps the people next year not get scammed by the same person. But what really tipped the scales for me is the fact that there's an intersection here with the important work we have to do in the climate sphere. We are investing and helping Vermonters invest with incentives in things like swap outs for high efficiency wood stoves, incentives for heat pumps, incentives. We want people to better insulate their homes. We are constantly having small tweaks to code. And the joke in the residential sphere is code is voluntary. It's not voluntary. It is not voluntary, but there is no mechanism to deal with it. All we're doing here is ensuring that this workforce is at least informed of the opportunities that residents can have, of the investments, of the incentives that the state and other partners will give for making some of these investments. And as far as the growth in OPR, when I had the great pleasure of serving with the Senator from Windham, Senator White on GovOps, we were looking at the entire universe of professional regulation. And I was one that said, let's make this efficient and put everyone into OPR. We're not there yet, Madam President. There are good reasons why other people need to be regulated by other parts of state government. But the ones that it doesn't make sense, that are hangovers from 40, 50, 100 years ago, that lived in the piecemeal system, we have shifted into OPR, where it's much better organized, much more straightforward, and in fact efficient. And so I think this is appropriate. It's a light touch. It has some educational benefits. It is an easy consumer protection. And I look forward to supporting this, and I hope we can get it into law even this session if possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate propose to the House to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs as amended? Are you ready for the question? The senator from Caledonia is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. May I inquire of the presenter of the bill?
You may.
Madam President, I'm trying to play catch up, quite frankly. I understand this to be eligible for registration. That language is found on 2483 of today's calendar under section 5508. Individual must be in the position of being able to say, I have satisfied any judgments against me. If they have had, let's say, a dozen court cases, and they've satisfied the judgment in all of those cases, are they still able to become registered?
Thank you, Madam President. My understanding is that if a person has satisfied all the judgments, they are able to be registered. It says to be eligible for registration, you have to satisfy any judgment order related to the provision of professional services to a homeowner. And there are no professional, just remind people, there are no professional profession-specific qualifications for registration. So yes, all judgments against you have to be satisfied. And one of the transparency pieces of this is that contractors who have judgments still pending or still unsatisfied will be clear to the consumer who is looking to see who are the good actors. They can turn to it on this website. So it'll be very clear who has satisfied the judgments and who hasn't.
Does this website actually contain a list of people who have judgments pending?
This website is not yet hasn't been created yet, and I believe that I don't know the answer to that because it hasn't yet been created. But the anticipation is that it will be that there will be some transparency around that. Yes, that's my understanding, and I can get that for you by third reading.
So taking into account the worst case scenario of a bad actor, someone who has literally committed fraud in a series of places but has not been sued and has been sued in some other situations. As long as the judgments are satisfied, there's no investigatory process involved that would enable protection of a consumer in the event a person came and said, I've satisfied all of my judgments. That person is automatically eligible for registration.
As the registration system is yet to be fully designed, my guess is that there will be some place that identifies how many judgments have been levied against that contractor, whether they've been satisfied or not. So if you've had 10 complaints and they've been satisfied, it may be listed this person has had 10 judgments and they've been satisfied, but that this person has a history of being taken to court and or being challenged by the consumer that they work with. My understanding is that this website will be fairly transparent about the history of that professional.
Repeat the question, please, Senator.
Yes.
My apologies.
Madam Speaker, who would be developing this website?
The Office of Professional Regulation will be developing this website.
And if an individual had, say, a dozen judgments against them, but nevertheless has satisfied the judgment, so they're eligible for registration, would that individual's track record, so to speak, still be on the registry?
I don't, it is yet to be formed, and that is a good question to have with OPR, and we can have that during the course of the next year as it is being created.
I thank you.
My understanding, Madam President, is that there will be a degree of transparency about the history of these professionals.
I guess the concern would be that if, in fact, the history is there and they are registered, that, at least in my mind, is somewhat problematic if somebody is simply looking to see if somebody has been registered. But I thank the Senator, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. Are you ready for the question? The senator from Chittenden, Senator Sirotkin, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Just to be clear, we're voting on the proposed committee amendment as amended and not on going to third reading at this point, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
That will be the next question. Are you ready for the question? Senators are kindly asked to unmute. Again, the question is, shall the Senate propose to the House to amend the bill as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs as amended? Please unmute. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've amended the bill as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs as amended. The question now is, shall the bill be read for the third time? Are you ready for the question? The senator from Chittenden, Senator Baruth, is recognized, and I see others.
Roll call, please.
Thank you, Madam President. I remember working on this bill a number of years ago when I was on economic development. It has been a long time in coming. And as we used to work on it, and as I've heard the debate now, a couple of things always come back to me. The first is the need for a written contract. My colleague from Windsor, Senator Clarkson, talked about the Vermont handshake. And I understand that concept, but it seems to me a pretty basic principle that if you're going to have any sort of large scale work done, whether it's on your automobile or on your home, you might like a written contract that lays that out. So I've always been confused as to why that's controversial for people, especially since there'll be a model contract provided. But the other thing is when OPR would come in to testify, as you heard today, they would always talk about the fact that this was the majority of their complaints. So if we were going to do one thing all year, if we were going to do one thing, it would be to address this set of complaints. And when you look into those complaints, the people who are most often victimized are the elderly. They are people who are, still in full possession of their faculties, but they are easy to push around for a much younger, much stronger, much larger, in some cases, person. And so they have a discussion with the person, they go away, and then without a written contract, who do you think comes out on the right end of that when it's time to get paid? So as we would work on this, I always remembered my grandmother who died of stomach cancer. And in her last year, she was in hospice. She fell prey to every scam that there was on the telephone, which was coins from the Franklin Mint, porcelain dolls that they sold over the television, and a man who came to the house and tried to sell her a new fence around her property, and it was the hospice person that prevented that from happening. I shake my head that this is the fourth or fifth time we're having this debate when the evidence is so clear that there's an extremely vulnerable population out there. They are routinely targeted. Nothing ever happens to the people who go after them. And this is the lightest touch possible. So I hope we won't have the same debate we have always had. I hope we will have a strong show of support for this bill. It's well designed, and I congratulate the committee on bringing it forward. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. There were two requests for a roll call vote. I just want to note those, both from Senator Brock and from Senator Sorokin. I will go to you both now, just in case you have questions or additional things you'd like to say. The senator from Chittenden, Senator Sorokin, is recognized.
No, I was just requesting a roll call, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Franklin is recognized.
Likewise, Madam President.
Thank you. Are you ready for the question? And again, the senators from Franklin and Chittenden have requested a roll call vote. And the question is, shall the bill be read for the third time? Are you ready for the question? The secretary is kindly asked to call the roll.
Senator Ballant.
Yes.
Senator Baruth.
Yes.
Senator Benning.
No.
Senator Bray.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
No.
Senator Campion.
Yes.
Senator Chittenden.
Aye.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Collimore.
No.
Senator Cummings,
Yes.
Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Hooker,
Yes.
Senator Ingalls,
No.
Senator Kitchell,
Yes.
Senator Lyons,
Yes.
Senator McDonald,
Yes.
Senator Mazza,
No.
Senator McCormack,
Yes.
Senator Nitka,
No.
Senator Parent,
No.
Senator Pearson,
Yes.
Senator Perschlick,
Yes.
Senator Polina,
Yes.
Senator Rahm,
Yes.
Senator Sears,
Yes.
Senator Sirotkin,
Yes.
Senator Starr,
No.
Senator Terenzini,
No.
Senator Westman,
No.
Senator White,
Yes.
Please listen to the results of your vote. The yeas 20, the nays 10, and you've ordered third reading, you've ordered third reading, excuse me, of H 157. Thank you. I believe that concludes the action calendar for today. I will need a motion. The senator from Wyndham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I ask that the rules be suspended and we take up SR 10 off the notice calendar for action.
The senator from Wyndham has moved that the rules be suspended and SR 10 be taken up for immediate action. Are you ready for the question? Kindly unmute. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've suspended the rules and will now take up SR 10. We have on the calendar for action SR 10, introduced on May 18th, 2021. It was referred to the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of the bill or resolution, which we are treating as a bill.
SR 10, Senate resolution condemning anti-Asian and anti-Pacific Islander hate in the United States and recognizing May 2021 as Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in Vermont.
Senator from Chittenden, Senator Rahm is recognized for the report of the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Resolution 10 condemns anti-Asian and anti-Pacific Islander hate in the United States and recognizes May of 2021 as Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in Vermont, which mirrors the national designation that began with an act of Congress in 1978 for the first 10 days of May and was extended to the full month of May annually, beginning in 1990. To be clear, this resolution only designates AAPI Heritage Month for this year, and regardless of whether or not we were to make a permanent designation in the future, these kinds of acknowledgements are important to renew with each passing year, a moment to mark the unique contributions and struggles of distinct communities that have made our nation stronger and more diverse. And yet, descended from the global majority in the Asian continent, having arrived in what is now the United States as early as 1587, and being part of the Pacific Islands that have been annexed by the United States, such as Hawaii, Guam, and American Samoa, the Asian American and Pacific Islander communities and experiences are in no way monolithic. As Kathy Park Hong wrote in Minor Feelings in Asian American Reckoning, Asian Americans inhabit a purgatorial status, neither white enough nor black enough, unmentioned in most conversations about racial identity. In the popular imagination, Asian Americans are all high-achieving professionals. But in reality, that is the most economically divided group in the country, a tenuous alliance of people with roots from South Asia to East Asia to the Pacific Islands, from tech millionaires to service industry laborers. How do we speak honestly about the Asian American condition, if such a thing exists? Perhaps the one thing that unites us is our perpetual foreignness, a deep othering, being hemmed into our existence by quotas and questions like, where are you really from? In Interior Chinatown, Charles Yu writes, "You came here, your parents and their parents and their parents, and you always seem to have just arrived, and yet never seem to have actually arrived." I articulate all of this, Madam President, to help us make sense of the paradox of the past year for Asian Americans and Asian Vermonters. To break the glass ceiling with a South Asian woman serving as vice president, closely followed by 6 Asian women being gunned down in Atlanta due to their race. To have Asian Americans account for 20% of America's physicians and surgeons and 1 in every 11 nurses, while experiencing one of the sharpest rises in targeted violence against Asian Americans in recent U.S. history. To celebrate prominent and influential Asian Vermonters like Harry Chen, Bo Yang, and even myself, while many of our fellow AAPIs are still pushed to the margins of our communities and told they don't belong. It is in this context that we still stand united as Americans and Vermonters who call this country and state our home proudly and without precondition. If I may, Madam President, I would now like to read the resolution that has been co-sponsored by 2/3 of our colleagues.
You may.
Whereas Americans of Asian descent, including Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders, have made noteworthy contributions to our society, and whereas their roles during the COVID-19 pandemic as first responders, healthcare providers, and medical scientists have been vital, and whereas despite the historic election of Kamala Harris as our nation's first vice president of South Asian heritage, the presence of hateful attitudes towards Asian Americans attracted national attention with the recent violent deaths of 6 Asian women in the Atlanta area. And whereas the Stop AAPI Hate Reporting Center reported 6,603 incidents of hatred directed at Asian Americans from March 19th of 2020 through March 31st of 2021, with the number of these incidents having increased significantly during March 2021. And whereas 12.6% of the reported hate incidents were categorized as physical assaults, including attacks against the elderly, and 65.2% were classified as verbal harassment. And whereas in August of 2020, several United Nations anti-discrimination groups issued a joint document reporting that racially motivated violence and other incidents against Asian Americans have reached an alarming level across the United States since the outbreak of COVID-19. And whereas on April 29th, 2021, the United States Senate, by unanimous consent, passed Senate Resolution 200, condemning recent hate crimes committed against Asian American and Pacific Islanders, which called on federal and state officials to expeditiously and vigorously investigate all reports of hate crimes against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders and to hold the perpetrators of these crimes accountable. And whereas now is an important moment to recognize, as has President Biden in a recent presidential proclamation, the importance of Asian Americans to our nation's strength and to its rich cultural diversity. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate that the Senate of the state of Vermont condemns anti-Asian and anti-Pacific Islander hate in the United States and recognizes May of 2021 as Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in Vermont. And be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Senate be directed to send a copy of this resolution to the Asian Pacific Islander Desi Americans of Vermont and to the Vermont congressional delegation. Madam President, your committee received testimony from our Office of Legislative Counsel, and there was a lot of informal input in the drafting from APITA Vermont, the organization that was just named in the resolution. As I conclude my report, I just want to underscore for the body that many Asian Americans have been the victims of this pandemic in more ways than one. I asked some of my Asian American colleagues if they wanted to convey their stories in my report. If I may, Madam President, I would like to read one response.
You may.
My Thai American father died of COVID early in the pandemic. He was located in Ohio. He died of simple dehydration after multiple denials of service by the healthcare system. This is just one example of the multiple forms of bias my family experienced in seeking appropriate medical treatment during the pandemic. The result is my father is dead when he could have very easily been saved if he had received the most basic of medical care. I respectfully submit this resolution to you in memory of this Vermonter's father and for all of our Asian American elders who have faced discrimination, marginalization, and attacks that have resulted in severe trauma and death during the course of this pandemic. Madam President, your Senate Economic Development Committee advanced this resolution on a vote of 401 and asks for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. The question now is, shall the resolution be read for the third time? Are you ready for the question? The senator from Windham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I wanted to speak to several things in this resolution. First being, the senator from Chittenden just said the vote in committee was 401. And just by way of explanation, I was the one who was absent that day in a meeting related to the budget. So I just want to be clear that it would have been a unanimous vote out of committee. The second thing I want to say, Madam President, is that when the senator from Chittenden approached me about doing this in the last few days of the session, I was very much in support of it, despite the fact that we were running out of time. And I want to explain why. The senator from Chittenden and I have a mutual, very good friend who is Chinese American. And some years ago, he has lived in Vermont for a very long time and is raising his children here. And several years ago, after living in Vermont for many years, he was approached. He was out running errands, and somebody approached him and told him, essentially, go back to where you belong. You're disgusting. You don't belong here. And he did this. He was approached in front of his family, in front of his children. And in talking with him afterwards, he said the hardest part was actually not that verbal attack on him. The hardest part was that he went back to his friends to tell them what had happened, and they were disbelieving. They said, you must have misunderstood. It must not be because you are Asian. It must be for some other reason. And he said that was actually much more hurtful, because what he wanted from his friends and from his community was to be seen. And that, for me, is the crux of this resolution. It is to acknowledge and to see community members that need our support. So I will be thinking of him as I vote in support of this resolution. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. Are you ready for the question? Senators are kindly asked to unmute. The question is, shall the resolution be read for the third time? All those in favor, please unmute. Make sure you're unmuted and say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of SR 10. The senator from Windham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I ask that the rules be suspended and we take up SR 11 for immediate action.
The senator from Windham has moved that the rules be suspended and SR 11 be taken up for immediate action. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've suspended the rules and will now take up SR 11 for immediate action. We have on the calendar for action SR 11, introduced on May 19th, 2021. It was referred to the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs, which reports it has considered the bill and recommends that the bill be amended as appears on pages 2487 to 2488 of today's calendar. Please listen to the second reading of SR 11.
SR 11. Senate resolution honoring the memory of George Floyd by designating May 25, 2021 as a day of remembrance and action.
The senator from Franklin, Senator Brock, is recognized for the report of the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs.
Thank you, Madam President. May I speak to the bill and the amendment?
You may.
Thank you. A year ago, on next Tuesday, will be the anniversary of the death of George Floyd. And George Floyd's death is something that is imprinted and seared on the memory of America. Scores of people saw George Floyd die, and millions of people have seen the ample video of that death. Now, some would say that George Floyd was a criminal. He was accused of a crime, passing a counterfeit $20 bill, that he may have been, at least at one point, uncooperative with police officers. But the underlying answer to all of that is that George Floyd was murdered. And that is not an ideological statement. That is not a political statement. That is a statement of fact as determined by a jury that convicted Derek Chauvin, a Minneapolis police officer, of murder in the death of George Floyd. George Floyd's name could have been substituted with the names of a large number of other Black Americans who also died in various situations by law enforcement means, some of which was questionable. In George Floyd's case, though, it was very clear what was happened, and we now have the jury verdict to confirm that. This resolution honors the memory of George Floyd because of George Floyd's role in cementing in the mind of America the need to change, the need to improve what we do, and the need to ensure that whatever happened to George Floyd does not happen again to any other American, regardless of his or her race. As I look at the resolution itself, it is a resolution that honors the memory of George Floyd by designating May 25th, 2021 as a day of remembrance and action. This is a one-time day of remembrance that recognizes this single day in this single instance. It is not a recurring holiday. And it cites the story of what happened to Mr. Floyd, that an officer knelt on his neck unabated for more than 9 minutes until he became unresponsive and died. It notes the fact that the officer who did this was charged with several counts of murder and manslaughter and was convicted of all of them in a court. And it recognizes that we now have an historic opportunity, both for the nation and the state, to adopt a new course toward the administration of justice that recognizes our racial diversity and some of the continuing tensions between Americans who are Black, Indigenous, or persons of color and law enforcement community. And it resolves that the Senate of the state of Vermont honors the memory of George Floyd by designating May 21st, 2021 as a day of remembrance and action, and that the Secretary of State be directed to send a copy of the resolution to the Vermont Human Rights Commission, the Executive Director of Racial Equity, the Vermont chapters of the NAACP, the Vermont Congressional Delegation, and by the amendment that is also on the calendar today to also send a copy of the resolution to the George Floyd Memorial Foundation and the family of George Floyd. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the Senate amend the resolution as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs as offered by Senator Brock? Are you ready for the question? Kindly unmute. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've amended the resolution as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs. The question now is, shall the bill be read the third time? Are you ready for the question? Kindly unmute. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered third reading of SR 11. The senator from Windham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I ask that the rules be suspended and we place SR 10 in all remaining stages of passage.
The senator from Windham has moved that the rules be suspended and SR 10 be placed in all remaining stages of passage. Are you ready for the question? Kindly unmute. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've suspended the rules and placed SR 10 in all remaining stages of passage. Oops. We have on the calendar for immediate action SR 10. Third reading was ordered presently. Are there any amendments before third reading? Please listen to the third reading of SR 10.
SR 10, Senate resolution condemning anti-Asian and anti-Pacific Islander hate in the United States and recognizing May 2021 as Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in Vermont.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? Kindly unmute. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've passed SR 10. The senator from Windham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I ask that the rules be suspended and that we place SR 11 in all remaining stages of passage.
The senator from Windham has moved that the rules be suspended and SR 11 be placed in all remaining stages of passage. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've suspended the rules and placed SR 11 in all remaining stages of passage. We have for third reading SR 11. Third reading was just ordered. Are there any amendments before third reading on SR 11? Please listen to the third reading of SR 11.
SR 11, Senate resolution honoring the memory of George Floyd by designating May 25, 2021 as a day of remembrance and action.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? Kindly unmute. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've passed SR 11. The senator from Windham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I ask that the rules be suspended and we take S3 off the notice calendar for action.
The senator from Windham has moved that the rules be suspended and we take up S3 for immediate action. That is the Senate. The Senate take up S3 for immediate action. Are you ready for the question? Kindly unmute. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've suspended the rules and will now take up S3. We now have on the calendar S3, an act relating to competency to stand trial and insanity as a defense. The House has proposed to the Senate to amend the bill as set forth on page 2488 of today's calendar. Beginning on 2488 of today's calendar. The senator from Bennington, Senator Sears, is recognized for the report, but before recognizing the senator, I do want to acknowledge that the underlying question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment on S3? The senator from Bennington is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to remind the Senate that this is an extremely important bill dealing with what happens when someone who commits a fairly serious crime is found either not competent to stand trial or not guilty by reason of insanity. And the bill's the heart of the bill, sections 1 through 4, have not been changed. They still remain in effect. A lot of good work over several years working with both the Department of Mental Health and the other body, as well as other members of the administration, have produced this bill. We passed a similar bill a year ago that died due to the pandemic. But I think that this is one of the more important bills you'll deal with. There are, it's rare cases, but we've had several high-profile cases, 3 in Chittenden County, 1 in Bennington County, where the system has not been able to respond. And this bill, working with your Health and Welfare Committee, is finally nearing completion. We would have probably had a conference committee if we were not still meeting virtually. But what happened is in the section 6, which is the forensic study working group, and that forensic study would be, what should Vermont do? How should Vermont deal with forensic patients? Most states have either a forensic institution or some other method of dealing with them. Vermont really doesn't. We have the state hospital, which we lost due to Hurricane Irene, and we still haven't really replaced. And so the question is, how do you deal with that? And so there have been back and forth between the House and the Senate. And I want to go over earlier this week, we sent over a proposal to concur with further proposal amendment. The House is now sending us back a counter proposal that does the following. The House concurred with us on a representative of the Buildings and General Services to the working group. They concurred with us on removing a second preliminary report on the mental health and criminal justice system. They concurred with us on changing the date for the final report on mental health and criminal justice system from 9/15 to 8/1/22. Our counter proposal narrowed the review of any gaps in the system structure in mental health and criminal justice to report on how we deal with individuals incompetent to stand trial who are adjudicated not guilty by reason of insanity. The House concurred. We moved consideration of competency restoration models out of the mental health and criminal justice system report to a standalone report. The House did not agree with that. And we eliminated the tiered decision-making regarding the need for forensic treatment facility and in the review of forensic treatment models. The House concurred in part. And we also deleted the addition of 2 new members to the Joint Legislative Oversight Committee. The House agreed with us on that. They did send back this counter proposal, which returns consideration of competency restoration models to the mental health and criminal justice system report. We had basically done a catch-all where any other issues could come up, but they wanted to have it specific. They also specified the preliminary report will not include an update on forensic treatment models. Instead, a summary of the working group's work to date on forensic treatment models is due on February 15th, 2022. And they insisted on a due date for the report on prosecutor notification regarding noncompliance with or inadequacy of ONH status. We had 2/1/22. They insisted on 2/15/22. Madam President, after consultation with members of the Judiciary Committee and the Health and Welfare Committee, we would recommend that we concur with the further proposals of amendment from the other body, and we pass S3.
Thank you, Senator. The question then is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment on S3? Are you ready for the question? The senior senator from Chittenden is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I simply want to thank the Senate Judiciary Committee and also my committee, Senate Health and Welfare, for working on this very difficult bill. And this area of mental health is extremely complex. And as the senator from Bennington has indicated, that very few people are in this environment of around competency and to stand trial. So, Madam President, I think the work that we have done will stand us well, and we will continue to move forward in this very difficult area in the future. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. Are you ready for the question? Again, the question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment on S3? Kindly ask senators to unmute. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've concurred with the House proposal of amendment on S3. The senator from Windham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I move that we take up, I ask that the rules be suspended and we take up H436 from the notice calendar for immediate action.
The senator from Windham has moved that the rules be suspended and H436 be taken up for immediate action. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've suspended the rules, and you will now take up H406. We have on the calendar today H436, an act relating to miscellaneous changes to Vermont's tax laws. The House has proposed an amendment to the Senate proposal of amendment, which is found on page 2495, starting on 2495 of today's calendar. The automatic question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment to the Senate proposal of amendment? The senator from Washington, Senator Cummings, is recognized for the report of the Committee on Finance.
Thank you, Madam President. I think this is the first time in my 20 years on finance that we have not conferenced a miscellaneous tax bill. But this is an unusual year. We took a pretty vanilla bill, if you remember last week, and we added a bunch of fairly non-controversial bills to it. The biggest ones in question were the tax exemption for the PPP grants and the extension of the EI, Earned Income Tax Credit, EITC, and the dependent and child care provider tax. The other major change we made to the bill that the House had sent us was, and this became the center of concern, when the miscellaneous tax bill left the House, the cost of OPEB, that's basically the retired teacher's cost, was not in it. When it came to us, the budget had gone forward, and the budget in the Senate had transferred the cost of OPEB, roughly $13 million a year, into the education fund. This year, because of the waterfall in property tax and sales tax, the education fund is probably as rich as I have ever seen it. There is a question about how long that richness will last. We don't know. But because when the bill came to us from the other body, they had lowered this year's property tax by 1.5 cents and had, I believe it was $15 million on the bottom line to cover any changes because the future coming out of the pandemic is unknown. Because OPEB had been added, we did not have money on the bottom line, somewhere around $2 million. So your Senate, and you concurred, we kept the property tax level. And the funding for OPEB has been a bone of contention for the past week. as of 2 days ago, the cloud tax, which your finance committee hasn't even had a chance to take testimony on, was being added to cover the cost of OPEB. In the past, when we've switched a program to the Ed Fund, funding usually followed it. But that's also when we had general fund transfer, which has also gone away. We are now on the sales tax. So the bill, as it came back to us, had the property tax with the 1.5 cent decrease. And it also added two sections of, I believe it was S33, which was a Tif bill. It extended for 1 year the Tif districts to incur indebtedness because the pandemic kind of put everything on hold for 1 year. So this extends it. And then there was the last minute request from the auditor's office to audit the Burlington waterfront TIF district. We had set that date, I believe, where had we set that date? Not less than 5 years after the effective date. Burlington had wanted it January 1st. It came back January 1st. The auditor wanted it immediately. This has been the one with the most back and forth. It has been settled, and this was a floor amendment yesterday, that it will be back to October 1st, 2021. We split the difference between the auditor's request and the City of Burlington's request. Your Committee on Finance was able to take more testimony on our ability to reduce the property tax. I think we would all like to do that. In the meantime, the whole OPEB pension system is going to a committee of study, and the budget conferees were also dealing with OPEB and trying to close the budget. So an agreement was reached that OPEB would be set aside, that I believe it's $150 million in general fund money and $13 million in Ed Fund money is fenced off and set aside in a special fund that will be available to fund whatever the pension decision is. That still left us with reducing the 1.5 cents. And in taking testimony, we are working on the January forecast for the Ed Fund. And there is also a growth forecast. The sales tax is coming in well ahead of forecast. So there will be, barring some major economic downturn, but we have reason to believe that there will be, leave the numbers like $17 million more on the bottom line. So we will have a cushion, and the economists think that this upcycle will continue into next year. Having heard that, your Committee on Finance feels comfortable with lowering the property tax, the 1.5 cents this year. And it is our recommendation on a 7-0-0 vote that the Senate concur with the House's proposal of amendment.
Thank you, Senator. The question then is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment to the Senate proposal of amendment on H 436? Are you ready for the question? Kindly unmute. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've concurred with the House proposal of amendment to the Senate proposal of amendment on H 436. The senator from Windham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I ask that the rules be suspended and that S3, an act relating to competency to stand trial and insanity as a defense, should be messaged to the governor forthwith.
The senator from Windham has moved that the rules be suspended and S3 be messaged to the governor forthwith. Are you ready for the question? Kindly unmute. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've suspended the rules and messaged S3 to the governor forthwith. The senator from Windham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I ask that H 436, an act relating to miscellaneous changes to Vermont's tax laws, be messaged to the House forthwith.
The senator from Windham has moved that the rules be suspended and H 436 be messaged to the House forthwith. Are you ready for the question? Please unmute. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've suspended the rules and messaged H 436 to the House forthwith. The senator from Windham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I ask that we take up any remaining confirmations. I believe the chair of government operations may be prepared to do that.
There's been a motion to take up confirmations. Confirmations are on page 2499 of today's calendar. At the bottom, I believe there are two. And the senator from Windham, Senator White, is recognized for the report.
Thank you, Madam President. At this point, I would move that we suspend the rules to take up the two nominations on today's calendar that are not underlined, and then we take them up as a group without debate and confirm them today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Windham has moved that the rules be suspended and the appointees or individuals listed and not underlined on the bottom of page 2499 be confirmed by the Senate. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please unmute and say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and you've suspended the rules and confirmed the individuals listed on page 2499. The senator from Windham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I ask that the Senate, pending announcements, I ask that the Senate stand in adjournment until 1 p.m. this afternoon.
The senator from Windham has moved the Senate stand in adjournment until 1 p.m. today, May 21st. Pending announcements. Are there any announcements this morning? The senator from Windham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Senators, two items I know that you're very interested in, one being the budget, H 439. We will be hearing from the chair of appropriations at 1 o'clock. She'll be reporting on the committee of conference. I wanted to give senators a few more hours to look at the budget documents before we take it up. That was the reason I didn't take it off the calendar this morning. The other item I want to draw attention to is senators who serve on joint rules. I would love for you to take a few minutes to look at JRS 24. We'll be taking that up this afternoon as well. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any additional announcements before we adjourn? Seeing none, hearing none, the senator from Windham has moved the Senate stand in adjournment until 1 p.m. today, Friday, May 21st. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the Senate